Hey everyone. It's Sleepy Reader coming at you with another comic book countdown. These will be the new comics I picked up and read. I picked them up on Wednesday, February 23rd, I believe. I have 15 comics in this here stack. Um, and there was a lot of really good comics in this stack. And I think particularly notable is there were tons of different color styles, coloring styles, color art styles in these comics, and a lot of them I really liked. I tend to complain about color when it bugs me and when it goes wrong, but there was so many different interesting styles. It really stood out in my head. Hey, really cool stuff happens in modern comics when the color is good. Um, and almost all of them had great stories and great art. So it was a tricky one to rank these, and as usual, they are just ranked by whatever tickled my fancy. Totally subjective, not about some larger critical view of comics or anything like that. I actually think I got 17 new comics, but there's a few that I haven't caught up on. One might be what was it? I can't remember now. It's over here somewhere. Rush. Did Rush come out this week? I haven't caught up on that. But there might be another one that I haven't caught up on. Plus, some of the things I picked up this week were older. Um, anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's dive in. In at number 15, I'm sad to say, what for me was Gunslinger Spawn. Uh, it seemed like a super stretched out little moment of a story. Art's good as always, color's cool. Um, but I feel like we moved an inch throughout the length of the story in terms of plot, and it was really just a conversation with a little bit of violence thrown in. So I was just kind of bored reading it, to tell you the truth. I feel kind of like Todd McFarlane's buying for time while he thinks about what's going to happen next, or waits for his other books, which I'm not reading, to line up with this one. I don't know. But that was my only real disappointment of the week. No, there was another disappointment. In at number 14 is Two Moons, but I already knew this was going to be a disappointment because the previous two issues in this arc were confusing and disappointing to me, and it merely ended out that way too. And then with what I thought of as kind of a faked happy ending, there were all kinds of aspects of the ending that I just couldn't buy into, including the fact that our hero would be happy leaving his son in a white man's jail. What does he think's going to happen to his Native American son in a white man's jail? But and that's the part I understood. There's a lot here that I still don't understand. This was such a cool book originally that I may go back to the beginning of this arc and reread it just in case I've sadly misjudged the writing. As you can see, the color is just crazy in this issue. It almost reminds me of color in certain Richard Corbin comics and things like that. This comic book has gone through a lot of different colorists, and I would say that the early colorists like Dave Stewart and Bill Crabtree went for a bit more of a naturalistic approach, although it has a spooky atmospheric feel, and now it's just kind of over the top, and it was kind of fun. This is Jeremy Cox. I think he's the fourth colorist on this comic. Um, anyway, and the art as always was kind of good, especially when they was doing magical, horrific images and such. But the writing just for me lost me. So both of these, I guess, still good art, but the writing just lost me. There's going to be another arc of Two Moons, and as I was discussing with Rasa, we probably will end up trying it anyway, just because the first arc was so darn good. Here's an interesting book, which I can't tell if the writing's good or not. Distorted. Uh, my best guess is this is a European comic. It's got really good art, has an intriguing setting where there are some people with superpowers. But it felt like maybe this was just the first 24 pages of a graphic novel or something without any thought given too much to it being a single issue, a single chapter to be read. So it doesn't feel like there was enough setup, enough information about what was going on. But I was very charmed by the art, and I certainly don't mind a story about people with superpowers and perhaps children being repressed for their superpowers or something. I'm just not sure what it all meant, what it all added up to. So depending on the week, if I see Distorted 2, I might pick it up. I think that's another theme sort of the week. There was quite a few comics that I sort of suspected were originally published in other countries and republished here. Now, this does not have the border issue that some foreign comics do, and the small typeface issue that sometimes happens with the foreign comics. So if it is a foreign comic, it wasn't like originally made in a different proportions than an American comic, I guess. So this is the beginning. This was at number 13. So 13 and up were all comics I really enjoyed. I'm intrigued by Distorted. I just don't have enough information. It'll have to depend on my mood when the next one comes out. I think this is the penultimate issue of Oblivion Song. There was a long gap between this issue and the previous one. Robert Kirkman in the back pages says that was his fault. This continues to have great art and is certainly action-packed. But I'm growing a little weary of the plot, and I'm still excited to get to the last issue. I've really enjoyed this whole series, but I just was a little bit like, let's get on with it. I'm ready for it to be over. But there's only one more issue, and there's obviously one more twist to come. So that may up my... I mean, I have a pretty high opinion of this series overall. It may up my opinion of it even more, or, leave it flat. We'll see. And here's an interesting one. In at number 11, another one that is probably originating in another country, although again the proportions look right. This is called Quad, and last week I read a comic called Quad, and there's not a lot of explanation of what's going on here, but this Quad, the first Quad, Tara and Elvis, was story and art by Eduardo Schall, and this next Quad, they aren't numbered, is a different story, and it's story and art by Lucio C. Santos. So this one, which I've talked about before, was about a mechanic in this post-apocalyptic future. This one is about a city in this post-apocalyptic future that has maintained itself in kind of a bubble, separate from all the disasters. And the narrator of it, this was really good. Maybe I should have ranked it higher. The narrator of it is a robot whose job is to check other robots for ghost software or malware that is making them not obey the 3 laws of robotics. And yes, they quote, without mentioning Isaac Asimov, they quote Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. And then there are a bunch of robots breaking those laws because of the bad software. And it's kind of amusing because this a robot hero who's a detective smokes cigarettes, and he narrates the whole thing in sort of classic detective style, and he has kind of it's almost like a Philip K. Dick science fiction situation where he can't figure out, he doesn't know, although it's his job to check other robots for software failures, for all he knows, he has been invaded by some malware and has lost his moral compass, so to speak, or will at some point. He never knows, and we never learn by the end of the issue. But it's a cool little sci-fi detective story. So I wish they just told us a little more about Quad. What is Quad? I now want more issues. I thought that this one about the mechanic was to be continued, but maybe it really was just a one and done. I'll have to reread it with the eye of it being a one and done. Maybe this is going to be maybe there's going to be 4 one and done since it's called Quad. I don't know. And it lists the creators. Let's see. Is this one? Yeah, this fellow's listed as one of the creators of the original idea. and so is this fellow. So there's 4 creators listed. Maybe there's going to be 4 comics. It would be nice if there was just some aftermatter saying how the project came to be and what the goal of this project is. I mean, they do explain the how the apocalypse happened by massive solar storms that destroyed global technology and such. So anyway, fun, cool stuff. Yeah, I'm beginning to doubt my ranking of Quad at number 11, but there were all so many good to read comics. Maybe I felt like I couldn't rank Saga at the bottom of the good to read comics. Another interesting issue of Saga. There is kind of a wondering if Saga, in my mind as I was reading this, if Saga needed to be so long. But there were, I'm just never going to be as excited over Saga maybe as I once was. But we got some new twists. And one of the things that I'm sometimes enjoy about Saga and sometimes I'm critical about is I think one of Brian K. Vaughan's systems is in every issue to have something to super shock you, whether it's like in the last issue, it was just the characters getting naked and having sex out in the open. Hate sex, I think it was also. This issue, it's a really horrific threat and joke kind of on people's sensitivities in near the end of the comic, so I don't want to spoil it or anything. But I've heard some people on YouTube who are kind of upset by it. That's an interesting thing because there's been other things in Saga that might have upset other people, and those people were at the time criticized for instance, I guess it was censored on Comixology once. I think there was one where while committing acts of violence, Prince Robot would have scenes of men giving each other blowjobs on his screen. So that's an example of one that I think upset some people and other people poo-pooed it. But now kind of a different set of sensibilities is being attacked here, you might say. I think it's well, it's A, because Vaughn needs to shock somebody every time. And B, it's a way of making a new character way more, amping up their villainness at a very rapid clip. So anyway, I enjoyed Saga. I put it in number 10. It was not, of this very good week, it was not an outstanding comic. And there's like question marks in my brain about it and where it will go over time. Here's issue 4 of Orphan and the Five Beasts. Looking at previews, it looks like coming up in 2 months is a trade of these first 4 issues. The story seems hardly done at all. So there needs to be at least 4 more stories. So I'm guessing there's going to be a long gap. A trade will come out, and then we'll get Orphan and the Five Beasts possibly starting at number 1 again. It may be confusing the way Man or Black was done. But the beast of this issue is really crazy and drawn with tons of energy and insane zeal by James Stokoe. My only sort of negative about this is it took such a long time for these 4 issues to come out. And his taste in sort of an orangey brown coloring, I don't know. It's okay. But man, is it consistent throughout. I think Stokoe's doing his own coloring. Okay, and I really enjoyed, so I put at number 8, Berserker, number 7, by Keanu Reeves and Matt Kint and Ron Garney and Bill Crabtree. We get a new twist on what's going on here, and it feels like we're finally kind of moving deeper into the story with issue 7. Perhaps because all of this is written for the trades in the 6-issue chunks, perhaps. So we're not expected to have too much revealed per trade. I don't know. I'm hoping that the story will accelerate some more beyond issue 7, because I liked the acceleration we did see here. I like the sort of Conan sci-fi Conan immortality history kind of aspects of things. and the more that's explored, the more fun it is for me. I mean, I've liked Berserker all along. So yeah, it was a cool issue. I think it's coming out. When did issue 1 come out? I think it's coming out much slower than I originally anticipated. Okay, in at number 7, another one that I wonder, is this a European comic originally? All of these ones I wondered about, I could not find anything about a translator or previous publication, but there's not a lot of information going on here to draw on, really. I don't find an indicia at all in this one. I guess it's going to continue. On the cover, there's not a number. On the inside, it says heavy metal drummer. Where'd it go? I missed it. That's weird. Okay, Damien, your brain is not working well. Oh, there it is. On the 5th page, it says Heavy Metal Drummer Volume 1. This was fun. You can kind of see it's done in kind of a scratchy, almost old school underground comics kind of drawing style. But then with some really cool coloring over it. And it seems like we're getting some kind of alien invasion or Cthulhu kind of invasion that's intersecting with the experiences of this either heavy metal band or punk band. To me, they look more like a punk band. But so this is a really cool kind of gonzo, silly comic. And I'm really looking forward to more. So I don't know how often it's going to come out or what the story is there. And it is just slightly smaller than a regular comic. And that might be because of its original European album proportions, perhaps. I don't know. Again, there's no explanation in here. I didn't realize Behemoth also is a record company. Is that part of the backdrop of Behemoth, or did they start as a record company? That's interesting. Isn't that there's a metal group called Behemoth? I believe, yeah. So I don't know if there's any link there. But anyway, this was a lot of fun. I put it at number 7. And again, this follows in kind of what I'm talking about with a lot of coloring that I really enjoyed. And each, like I said, each comic features a different style of coloring. Speaking of color and art, there is this new comic that I did not know was coming out, but I stumbled across it. Step by Bloody Step, written by Cy Spurrier, art by artists who I'm not familiar with, Matias Bergara, and colors by Matheus Lopez. I may have come across Matheus Lopez, probably Matheus Lopez coloring before. That name rings a slight bell. It's a totally wordless comic, and it must be 40 or 45 pages long, and this first issue, and it follows the journey of this giant armored creature or armored robot. I think it's a creature, protecting this sort of sudden, not newborn, but small child. And they travel across weird landscapes, and the armored creature fights off monsters and takes care of her. I think it's a her. Makes clothes for her. And it's really cool, and the art is really cool. I really enjoyed the progression through the different landscapes, and there is a sense by the end that something else may be going on, and there may be some kind of, I don't know, priesthood or evil cult or something hunting her down. There are other aspects where the art, or maybe it was the color, left things a little unclear, where I was flipping pages back and forth, trying to figure out, well, what was I supposed to be noticing on this page? What information was I supposed to be getting? You could say it's good for the reader to do more work, but I kind of felt like when you're doing a silent comic like this, a wordless comic, you need to be sure that everything is really clear. I suspect that a totally wordless comic works better when it's just the work of one person. This is three people, a writer who I guess has told the artist what to show in each panel or each page, and the colorist who, and then of course the artist, and then the colorist who's there left at the end to try to further make clear what's going on and how much does the colorist service the script versus servicing the art and that kind of thing. So I feel like there were a number of moments where I was unclear what was happening. For instance, it's too much to search for all the spots. But there were times in something like that, these images, where I didn't know all that I was supposed to be learning. And then later, it looked like the giant armored figure was keeping the child from accepting food from villagers or a stuffed toy. I was particularly surprised that maybe she's not allowed to eat, or maybe I misunderstood. There seems to be a scene where they use her blood to bring back the crops. So I guess I understood that properly. Another thing is, at one point the mask of the armored figure comes off, but we don't see the event that caused the mask to come off. It just was kind of confusing. You had to kind of look closely at a small panel to see the and say, hey, that must be the mask down by the foot, the helmet. It didn't look very big. And then I don't want to give away, but we see something under the mask, and I don't know what to make of that. Anyway, it's definitely a cool comic, and it's worth getting if you're an aficionado of fantasy and you don't mind the silent comic kind of thing. In at fifth place was Aerosmith, Behind Enemy Lines, issue 2. I believe it's supposed to be a 12-issue series, following off the 6-issue series that Kurt Busiek and Carlos Pacheco did many, many years ago. And I recently read that series, the original series. Here's the first issue of it. And it's interesting to see how the color has changed. I mean, the new colorist, Villalobos, has tried to kind of keep the tone of the original. But the original coloring, there's just something, I don't know, somewhat different about it. And I wonder if in this modern version, if it is a little less, working a little less well for the storytelling. But anyway, I still like the color in here. But it keeps things kind of fuzzier. And of course, Pacheco's art has slightly changed over that time. This issue started off slow, and it took me a while to get into it. But by the end, I was pretty riveted about what was going on and very eager to see the next chapter. I don't want to give away too much for people who are reading it. I do think that they're ill-advised with this cursive font because there's a lot of it to read, and it takes my brain a little extra time to read it. And during that extra time, my brain is kind of wandering a little bit and less focused on the comic, I noticed. Maybe that's just my advanced old age or my attention deficit disorder. But anyway, a cool issue, good read. I'm really looking forward to more Aerosmith. And I really loved, I put it at number 4, I really loved this issue of Human Target. By the time I got to the end, I spent some time by the time I got to the end, I realized there was some stuff I missed where one character I thought was the same character was actually a different character. But I feel like Tom King is playing a really interesting game here now. I know of recent times I've not keyed into what Tom King's doing as much, but I'm starting to like it a lot. That first the art by Smallwood was carrying me, but now I'm sort of into the game Tom King is playing. because everything in this issue happens inside the mind of our hero during the time it takes him to pass a salt shaker over to the Martian Manhunter. And Tom King really did some good stuff with that. So very cool. It's too bad this is a $5 book, but I guess because I originally was gonna read one issue and then trade away, but I guess I'm on it for the ride. I think maybe, I mean, I don't want to jump ahead of myself, but it may be that I'm enjoying this the most I have a Tom King book since The Vision. In at number 3 is the latest Usagi Yojimbo reprint in this series called Lone Goat and Kid. Lone Goat and Kid, the overarching title of this current miniseries, it so far doesn't apply. And I think maybe that was a bad choice of titles because it's going to lead readers to think that this is a series of stories or one story in an arc based on Lone Wolf and Cub, and so far it's not. This is another one shot. It's very good. It feels very early in Usagi's adventures in a sense, or in Stan Sakai's making of Usagi, but it has 4 chapters in it, and it all plays very nicely. It's got that simplicity, but something deep within the simplicity of the story that is very satisfying by the end. So another really good Usagi. But there were other comics that got me really excited. So I'm bringing Radio Apocalypse number 2 in as my number 2 book in this incredibly excellent week. Now, it did have the advantage of I read issue 1 and issue 2 together, and so together they particularly impressed me a lot. This is kind of, from Ram V, the writer, a poetic vision of kind of the tragedy of his another post-apocalyptic world, but a poetic vision of this tragedy of the post-apocalyptic world. And I like the rhythm of it and the feeling of maybe overlayered stories based around this sort of radio where they broadcast music from the past. Ram V asks you to listen to songs that he references in here. I tried that a little bit, but I found it hard because the songs had vocals and the vocals distracted me. And I also got the tone that he was wanting to go for, and I'm not sure everybody's psychology is different, right? And I'm not sure it's quite matched the tone I got, a tone I liked a lot from the words and art. And the artist here, the 2 artists, the Anand R.K., who I think was the artist on Graffiti's Wall, which I really loved, and the colorist Anisha, they do an awesome job. It's kind of darker in this issue than this issue, and I'm not sure if that was on purpose. Maybe it's just because of the time of day that's being portrayed. But incredible art. I was sucked in by the art before I was by the story. And like I said, it's kind of a poetic tapestry. So at first I was looking for more of a plot, and I more sort of, the art helped me gear into the feel of the story. With them, it's about character, it's about tone and atmosphere and landscape and everything like that. So really, really high level comics, and probably should have been ranked higher than my number 1, but my number 1 just had a wonderful novelty factor and touches on one of my areas of fandom, which is giant monsters. This is a one-shot from Scout. I also wonder if this is originally from Europe. It's by Marco Fontanelli, and I think he did everything. And it's a wordless comic except for the word pizza or maybe a few other words and sound effects. And it's an extra thick issue, one shot, about a giant monster named King Jira who's looking to get some pizza as he destroys a city. And it's fun, it's silly, it's got this slightly ugly, what I think of as the kind of artwork I think of as going back to American Underground Comics, but it may have other sources. inventive paneling throughout, inventive use of color, a great sense of humor. So it's just one, it's kind of like I want a giant sized coffee table book of this. It's something you just enjoy flipping through. I don't know if Scout even puts out hardbacks or what they do for their trade publications. I do wish comics had more notes about what they are. I think I think there's plenty of people like me who like to know some of the background. And a lot of these small plus publishers, they don't seem to want to tell you a lot. They want to just put the comic out there and not say anything. But I'd love an old school Marvel style back page, when before the letters page came out, they would put in these pages where they explained something about what they were up to in this comic or where it came from or the creative crew or something like that. And I'm sure plenty of other comics book companies have done that also. I just jumped on the Marvel thing. But this is a wonderful comic. And I suppose I could probably search online and find out more information about Marco Fontanelli and what he's done before, or what he plans to do in the future. Is he going to work with Scout some more? He's the king of monsters. So anyway, great stuff. I had a fantastic week reading comics. I think the only problem was that I had so many comics to read that I had to almost push myself through reading the comic books today. I didn't read all of them today, but I pushed my way through about 5 or 6 of them instead of my usual leisurely pace of 1 or 2 a day. Also, because I had other stuff I wanted to read. I'm currently starting to crack into this. The microphone was on top of it. Into this giant Uber Alice edition of Stray Bullets. I've read 3 issues so far, and that's nothing. There's 41 issues in here. I enjoyed them a lot. They depressed me a lot. And I think they're also black humor, but it's almost hard to tell if they're black humor or just depressing. I've heard people just rave endlessly about Stray Bullets, and so that gives me a lot of confidence as I go into it to give it space. Each story I read was from a different time period, and there was some in the background character sense that the characters might be connected, but not a lot of connective threads in the first 3 issues, just a teeny bit. And it's very daring in a sense to put out this unknown comic back in the 90s and not make clear what it's all about in the first 3 issues. I mean, each issue is also a standalone story, so I guess it's got that. But there's something kind of addictive about it and yet depressing about it at the same time, so far, for me. So anyway, that's my comic book week, and I'll be back soon enough.